Whole show going crazy. Whole show going crazy. Top 5 we debating.
Top 5. 5 Over Friends, the show where we debate our top 5 list on a topic chosen by a listener with the listener.
As usual, our friendship goes out the door once we get into it. This is 5 Over Friends. Hey guys, it's Seth. When Wes and I decided to start our podcast, we used Anchor because it's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And they'll distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's essentially everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So go download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Okay, so we'll kick it off. What's up, guys? It's Seth and Wes back for another episode of 5 Over Friends. We've got a guest in today, Matt. Matt sent us in a topic on Instagram. He chose the top 5 NFL players of the last decade. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
So grew up in Winston-Salem, still live here. Been here all my life. Here lately, just been coaching high school baseball here in town. For a little while, I helped run Validity NC, which is actually how I came across Wes. Met with a couple guys that I believe he knew that helped us out. And that was a few years ago. But
it was. I had some Validity stuff. I didn't know you were associated with Validity. So Wes kind of introduced me to Validity.
So yeah, that was a crazy time. It's probably been at least 7 years probably since that was up and running.
So that was a clothing brand, right? Just for the listeners who aren't familiar.
Yeah. So basically what we did was it started out as sneaker reselling. Pretty much we gained our following through that, through Twitter, Instagram, locally, and then eventually branched out and switched to more of a clothing brand. And that's kind of where I stepped aside and our other guy took control and ran with it. And now he's actually out in San Francisco, I believe, doing some handcrafted stuff, more like wallets, bags, things like that. But yeah, I met a lot of good people through that, and just kind of an experience. Just running your own business is a little different, but I mean, man, a lot of good memories came from it, and it was a good time.
Yeah, small world. I didn't know that you were associated with them, so that's kind of cool.
All right, did you grow up like around here?
No, I just found out about Validity through Wes. I'm born and raised in Kansas City, so.
Oh, okay. So now the shirt makes a lot more sense. I'm not going to spoil it for anybody, but
Yeah. So Seth and I just met randomly through sneaker Twitter. Just came across Seth was selling a pair, and we're in the same size range. So it was just kind of like a random thing, and we've stayed in touch for about that same amount of time that Validity existed, about 7-8 years.
Man, it's crazy, just what the internet can do now. I mean, there's guys that I talk to probably daily who I've never met in person, have become good friends with, thanks to shoes. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's wild.
Things have changed a lot too.
How you can
since I was hot in it.
Yeah, it's crazy you can consider somebody a good friend like that just through online interactions. And I was telling Seth that you and I, even though we grew up in the same area and have met a few times in person, most of our interaction has also been online. But
yeah, you can find me on Twitter just ranting anything about Panthers or Carolina. I mean, talking crap about Carolina basketball, whatever. I'm a Duke fan, obviously, and I know Wes has a state tie, so yeah. I mean, if that's it's Worldwide Wood. If anybody wants to have any fun just scrolling through there, don't take any of it serious. It's mostly profanity laced. I mean, once October comes, just ignore me because that's all it's going to be.
All right.
Well, it's cool that we all three kind of connected through social media and through the internet, and that's really kind of what we're trying to do with the show too, is connect with people. Just that we've never really met. I've never met you, Matt, but this is a cool opportunity to kind of talk about what is I really liked your topic because it's one of my passions, sports in general. So with that being said, I guess, so top 5 NFL players from the 2010s. If you want to give us your number 5, have at it.
All right. So number 5 went kind of out of the blue. I mean, it's out of left field. It's not typically something I would go with, but I didn't feel right making a list without a wide receiver. So number 5 was the head case himself, Antonio Brown.
AB, he is the head case
Yeah.
recently.
I didn't. He was someone I considered, but I didn't feel like. I felt like there was, like you said, I had to have a receiver. He wasn't the one I went with. I went with a different one.
I'll be honest. I don't want to spoil anybody, but I was very close to putting Calvin Johnson here, even though he only played for 5 years in this decade. The numbers that he put up were just stupid, but just overall, I couldn't bring myself to do it.
All right, I'll go with my number 5 since it was just said, Calvin Johnson.
That's the wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, for me, best wide receiver of the decade, hands down, not even really close. I mean, should have continued in the decade, but he played for the worst franchise of his time. They just handled him and handled their franchise terribly.
And then he played for the best franchise of the time and still couldn't figure it out. So,
but all right, go ahead, Seth. Let's hear your 5.
Well, before that, I just want to say I didn't pick a wide receiver on my list. So there's a spoiler there. I didn't pick like a third random wide receiver because I felt like my list was made of people who were by far clearly the best at their position. That was like my criteria. And I thought that there were 3 wide receivers that kind of battled for that number 1, maybe 4 even, top wide receivers. So with that, like, I couldn't just pick one. Antonio Brown was on my list. Megatron was on my list. Larry Fitz was on my list. I mean, there were some really great wide receivers, but I didn't feel like any one of those stood out as a class amongst themselves. So I didn't pick a wide receiver. My number 5 is Joe Thomas, offensive tackle for the Cleveland Browns. I think he was by far and away the best at his position for an entire decade. And I don't think that any offensive tackle was ever close to him. And he had to play on the worst team for the decade and did an incredible job protecting the likes of 46 different quarterbacks.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Was Tim Couch still quarterback back when he came in?
I believe he might have been. So, I mean, he protected, Money, Manziel. He protected everybody back there. Derek Anderson.
One bright spot of the Cleveland Brown organization for that decade.
Clearly. Yeah. And I don't think there was a left tackle that was anywhere near as good as he was for that long, that tenure. So he was number 5 on my list.
All right. Let's hear 4.
All right. So my number 4, again, I'm picking positionally. So I didn't think there was any better linebacker than Von Miller in the 2010s. I think that at the peak of his career, Von Miller was probably the best pass rushing linebacker that I've seen. I'm a Chiefs fan, so it's hard to say that with Derek Thomas like being in a legacy in Kansas City. I know a lot of people who aren't familiar with Kansas City and who aren't older don't know about Derek Thomas, but Derek Thomas was a freak for his short career before his untimely passing. But yeah, Von Miller, I had to see him destroy my Chiefs quarterbacks for so long, and he's still doing it. Von Miller, unanimous best linebacker in my opinion. So that's my number 4.
You made my honorable mention, but I like you picked who I thought was the best at my top 5. They were the ones that were the best at their position for the decade, and I think there was a better linebacker for the decade, and he falls in at number 4, Luke Kuechly.
That was coming.
It is.
I mean, I don't.
Home cooking.
I understand Von Miller's pass rush ability. That's something he brings to the table that Luke didn't. But Luke, in my opinion, best all-around linebacker of the last decade. And I mean, he's obviously a different type of linebacker than Von. And I would have considered Von as just as a pass rusher and not so much as a linebacker. And like I said, he was my honorable mention. But yeah, I think Luke takes the cake there for linebackers, and he comes in at 4.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with what you said. I considered Vaughn for my list. I mean, I think he has like 106 sacks of the last decade. But when you look at just a game changer and just a guy, I mean, you've seen the videos. I mean, Luke calling out plays before they even happen, and offensive talking about how he was the toughest defender they've went against. I mean, I think Wes is right there. I mean, both solid choices. You can't go wrong with either. It just kind of depends on preference, I guess.
Yeah, I think if you want a tackling linebacker, somebody who's kind of the captain of the team, I understand taking Luke. I don't know. I like the pass rush. I think when you talk about a game changer, somebody who can turn the ball over with a strip sack like he did, in an incredible number of times, take the ball out of the other team's hands with a sack for a loss of, 8 to 12 yards every, as often as he did. I think that's game changing for me. And I think that there were some other people on that defense who kind of filled that void of the tackling linebacker in their peak of the defense on the Broncos. So that's why I picked Vaughn.
I'm just glad you didn't bring up Super Bowl 50.
I don't need to bring it up. It speaks for itself. My God.
Yeah,
it was the most disappointing Super Bowl in the past decade. So
it's been all downhill since then.
When you said strip sack, I thought that was what was coming out of your mouth next.
All right, Matt, number 4.
Well, this couldn't have been scripted any better. Number 4, ironically, is Cameron Jarrell Newton.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. God. You guys are such home cookers. Cam Newton.
No.
Cam made my honorable mention.
No.
I mean,
Cam's not even a top 4 quarterback.
Nobody else mentioned so far has an MVP in the decade until Cam.
Okay, we're at number 4 on the list right now.
No, but I'm saying there's people that are also mentioned that don't and I mean, Cam has an MVP. He is in the conversation.
And he's a quarterback, not an offensive tackle like Joe Thomas. So I don't think that argument goes out the window a little bit, right? Like, when's the last time a wide receiver or an offensive tackle won MVP? I mean, that's a quarterback award, and this is the first quarterback that we've talked about. So come on.
Cam, as a Panthers fan, I would have.
You're blinded.
I'm
clearly, both of you.
But I love Cam, and he's a great quarterback, and he doesn't get enough love. And
he is.
Panthers did him dirty.
He is a great quarterback. Is that what I heard?
Is.
Okay.
Present tense.
I just want to know when the last time he was a great quarterback.
Before his coach let him play injured.
Okay. When you have an injury, after the Watt hit, that should have been it. I mean, you should have just made the decision, had the surgery there, and then it goes all the way back. For his entire career, the team and organization has just done him a disservice. I mean, the guy goes out there and puts his body on the line and plays through hurt. I mean, with him, even last year, he had no business playing the first 2 games. But I think a lot of it had to do with Cam thinking he could play through it. And also Ron knowing it was a big year for him. And if he started the year off sitting Cam, likely he's looking at, starting 0-2 anyways. But he's got tougher questions, and he's also probably looking to get fired earlier than he did last year. Dating back to even the Chargers game, I think that was like 2016 maybe, where he tears his labrum chasing a defender down 90-some yards, I think. I mean, it ended up being a pick 6, but I mean, he dove for the tackle at the goal line and ended up tearing his labrum. I mean, just the injuries playing. I mean, he continued to play that season, so it's just pointless of how mismanaged he was as a quarterback. And also, let's not forget that Dave Gettleman and Marty Herney have done him 0 favors for his entire career. They just constantly put him behind a mediocre line, and they thought that, hey, let's put Byron Bell out at left tackle and think that that's going to solve problems.
Don't you wish you had Joe Thomas at left tackle?
He won the MVP with Philly Brown as his best receiver.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this top 5 could have been, should have been, would have been?
This was.
Okay. He was. He was an MVP with Philly Brown as his best receiver.
Ted Ginn almost had a 1,000-yard receiving season.
Yeah, I mean that.
And this is back when Ted Ginn couldn't catch a cold. I mean, this is like just terrible. Not with Drew Brees and him actually catching the ball now, but
Kelvin Benjamin, though, man.
I mean, we're not talking about 6'5" defensive linemen out there.
He should have been a tight.
Receiver.
Kelvin should have just just embraced it and became a tight end.
So speaking of Cam, peak Cam ranks where? Like all-time quarterbacks.
All-time
like peak
quarterbacks.
Cam.
That's such a.
But peak Cam was like a year and a half long. 2 years long.
Peak Cam would be for me the
the
second best quarterback of the decade for me. Peak Cam.
Yeah.
Second
best
decade. Of the decade, second best quarterback. Yes.
I'll be honest. If we win Super Bowl 50, if it goes differently, then yeah. I mean, I agree completely. I mean, there's only one guy I think that you put him or put above him, and that's coming later in my list. But I mean, honestly, what his numbers are, I mean, he has 58 rushing touchdowns, and that's injuries included. And I think the leader may be, I don't know, it's not. It may be AP or something.
He lost Super Bowl 50 to a geriatric Peyton Manning.
He did not lose to Peyton Manning. He lost to that defense.
Yeah,
who had Von Miller on it.
He lost to not having an offensive line.
You didn't like my
Von
pick.
Miller on skates that game.
But Von Miller was killing it.
Caught the ball.
Yes, he did. That game's goes different if they make that call right. All right.
I mean, last point about it. Nate Chandler was on the offensive line. That's all I need to be said. I'm just whatever.
Matt's
right,
3.
Number 3. I could bash on Cam all day.
Me and Seth already argue and text all the time about Cam, and I stand by Cam, and I will continue to do so.
As a Panthers fan, as a Cam supporter, you're used to it by now. I was used to it by year 2 or 3. I mean, it's just something that we're accustomed to. I mean,
well, can I just throw in the outfits too, man? Like that brings them down at least 3 notches. Come on. All right, what's your number 3?
Number 3 for me is Aaron Rodgers. I didn't know where to fit him in at, but the thing that gave him a nod is just the MVP, obviously, but the Super Bowl in 2011. I think, honestly, just he's made, I don't know how many NFC Championship games this decade. Obviously, there was the one against Seattle that they won on like the 40-yard Hail Mary. I mean, not the Hail Mary, but the 40-yard touchdown pass from Russell Wilson. Aaron Rodgers is just solid. I mean, you know what you're getting from him. And honestly, Green Bay, after Jordy Nelson and, well, Randall Cobb was hurt a lot. But, yeah, I think 3 was probably a good spot for him. I was torn between him and another guy. And honestly, I don't want to say it, but probably Matt Ryan was another guy I considered. Just from the Super Bowl appearance and all that. But, I mean, I cannot stand Matt Ryan. I'll just throw that out there. Not that affects my rankings, but still.
I think Aaron falls in that same category, a similar category at least to Cam, is just them not putting the right stuff around their franchise quarterback. And I think it happens way too often that these owners, GMs, coaches, whoever's fault it is, they just don't do the right things around their franchise quarterbacks, and you're seeing it some now with Lamar, with Pat, with some of these young guys. They're putting the right skill position players and good lines in front of these guys, and you're seeing what can happen.
Yeah,
I mean, Lamar is successful because of that offensive line. They have such a good offensive line, and could you imagine a Cam or a Rodgers with a top offensive line? Rodgers has the talent to be, in my opinion, number 1 on this list, with the right stuff around him.
I think now you're seeing that the formula for a lot of these teams who draft a franchise quarterback early in the draft, like top 5 picks, is that they see there's a 5-year window before that extension where they go for it. I mean, you look at the Rams with Goff, what they did. I mean, they surrounded him with talent. And, I mean, they made the Super Bowl. It didn't work out. But I mean, I don't think Goff's that great of a quarterback. I mean, Philly did it with Wentz, and it wasn't even Wentz that won it. So, I mean, you look and see, as long as the talent's there, I mean, it helps out whoever the guy is. I mean, Nick Foles with, scrub talent around him is probably not winning that Super Bowl.
Mm-mm. And you see what he did when he went down to scrub talent in Jacksonville.
Yep.
I'm not an Aaron Rodgers guy. I don't like Aaron Rodgers. I don't know, something about him.
Oh, I mean,
Personally,
hey,
I just don't like
he's
the
a
guy.
scumbag.
Yeah, and
I feel like he has had some talent around him. I think he had a good defense for a long time that assisted him quite a bit.
I think, like, other than Jordy for however many years, other than Jordy for the longest time of this decade, he didn't have a lot. And then they finally got Devontae, but there was a gap there and Jordy was.
I mean, Cobb was pretty good there for a while. I mean,
Cobb's never been the number one guy, the number one go-to type of guy. He's always been that secondary. He's never been able to shine on his own.
I don't disagree with that, but I feel like some of the best quarterbacks and I think that Aaron Rodgers is a really, really good quarterback. I just don't like him. But like, he made him better. I understand that. But I think that he also had some talent around him. And I think he had a good defense. And he won the Super Bowl in 2011. I understand why you would pick him for the top 5. He's not on my top 5. Just maybe because I just don't like the guy, part of it. But then also I feel like I can pick, a couple more quarterbacks that I feel like stand out more to me in that decade. So,
yeah. All right, what's your 3?
My 3?
Mm-hmm.
My third.
Oh no, is it me? It's me. Never mind, I forgot. We're going out of order here. 3 for me is Gronk.
Gronk was on my honorable mention.
Best player at his position of the decade. There's a couple that come in later in the decade that kind of tried to challenge for that, but for me, best tight end of the decade, and so far best tight end of all time that I've seen play. I can't say much for before my time, but no tight end has ever, in my opinion, had to have a team game plan around him quite like Gronk, and has been as dominant and as physical and just and he was doing it half the time in like 10, 12 games a season and still putting up the numbers he was. Yeah. And it's pretty crazy. He assisted in one of the best dynasties of all time, getting however many. Was he part of? How many was he part of? I can't even remember off the top of my head.
Since what? He came in 2002?
I was going to say he was part of 4 of them, but that was what I was
going to say 3, but I could be wrong. I don't know off the top of my head, but I do like the Gronk pick. I feel like, I'm from Kansas City, so Tony Gonzalez is like my penultimate tight end. I feel like he really changed the tight end position. And I feel like Gronk really took it that next step and has been what's led to what we see now with like Kelsey and Kittle and Ertz to some degree. They're not just the guys. They're really just big wide receivers at this point. And they're not really meant to block as well as, Tony or Antonio Gates were back in the day. But, Gronk could block, even though he can't stop a Hail Mary. Apparently, he shouldn't be playing defense, shouldn't be playing safety.
Yeah, that was
against the Dolphins. But no, I understand that pick. I think that he was clearly the best tight end. But I think there at the end of the decade, he had some competition for that. So that's why he ultimately didn't make my top 5, because I think there were a couple that kind of came in a little later and stole some of that spotlight. So, and he didn't play very long. So.
I think early in the decade, you could probably say it was more Gronk and Jimmy Graham. I think were the 2 guys that most people consider to be 1 and 2. And then, Olsen did go on 3 straight 1,000-yard receiving seasons. But then later on, then you got your guys like Kelsey, obviously.
And then Kittle had the last 2 years.
Yeah.
But I still think that his run was dominant enough for me to put him in there. So, Seth, what's your 3?
My 3 is Adrian Peterson. I think he was clearly the best running back of the decade. I don't think it was relatively close. It's talking about having to game plan for one player who's not a quarterback. I think he completely changed every team's game plan every week that they had to play the Vikings in the 2010s. I think they had to focus, number one, on the run. And it's tough. If I were a Vikings fan, it would be really tough because you had such an all-time type running back, but you never really strung it together with a great quarterback other than Brett Favre at the very, 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 very end of his career.
Yep.
So I think he really attributed to them making those deeper runs like the NFC Championship with a 49-year-old Brett Favre. So I think he was clearly the best running back.
I'd agree, best running back. Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, even dating back to his Oklahoma days, I mean, if you watched Adrian Peterson play, I mean, it was just a man
insane.
against voice.
Yeah, it was
I
insane.
And then he gets to the league and he's doing the same thing there. And then, I mean, the 2,000-yard rushing season was just ridiculous to watch. I mean, I didn't follow Chris Johnson's as close, but I mean, just the tear that AP went on that season, it was just, I mean, something I've never seen before.
And he was such a workhorse to me. I think that's what separates him and like CJ2K's 2,000-yard season for me is CJ had a lot of long runs.
Mm-hmm.
And Adrian wasn't the quickest guy. And clearly he's still not the quickest. He's old with the Redskins before he gets cut, probably.
But he'd go out with 30 carries a game.
Oh, yeah,
problem.
all the time.
Yeah.
He'd just get beat up, and he would just, it's 4 yards here, 5 yards here, just continuously. And then he'd break one off for, 15, 20 yards. So I just felt like they really – they wouldn't be anywhere without him on that offense, in my opinion. So,
yep, I agree. Mm-hmm. All right, what's that two?
Oh, my number two is, again, a different type of pass rusher, but a different player. J.J. Watt is my number two of the decade. I feel like he was everywhere on the field. He took it over. He was the best defensive player for a string of different years. And he played through injury. Personally, I just like his passion for football. I could tell that he truly did have a passion for football, a lot like your guys' Luke Kuechly. I know he has a special place in your all's hearts. I really like J.J. Watt, and I like the way he played, his style. He was always in the backfield. He was calling out plays much like you guys said with Luke ahead of time. He was a student of the game, and I think that he really, as a defensive end, was incredible. So he played kind of that slash linebacker position where he would go out in a little bit of coverage at times too to switch things up. So
I thought about JJ, but to me, I felt there was a defensive lineman who was more dominant this decade. I'll get to him in a second. But I'm not gonna lie, I've got a list of about 6 or 7 honorable mentions over here. JJ was considered, but like I said, I wanted to take who I thought was the best player from the decade at that position. So I won't hate on the JJ pick, but I don't think he was the best defensive lineman. I'll call him second best of the decade for me.
He was second best of the decade
for at his position at defensive lineman.
Okay, with 5 All-Pros.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
What's your thoughts, Matt?
I just want to make sure with 20 and a half sacks on 2 different occasions, 17 and a half another occasion, 16 I just want to make sure we're on the same page here.
Right. That is good for second best of all time of the decade, or second best of the decade. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's another guy, and I don't know if it's where Wes is going with this, but he came in the league later, so I don't know as far as stats go, if everything's going to be there. But as far as player goes, Aaron Donald is somebody that I, would put right there with JJ. It's just kind of it's a toss up, honestly. But JJ does have the 5 All-Pros, and like you said, the 20 and a half defensive player of the years. He's got 3 or so of those. I can't remember exactly.
I think 3 sounds right.
But it's tough to argue with.
And Walter Payton Man of the Year, which for me means something.
Yeah.
It shows that he's giving back. And
he's, like you said, he's a great guy. But great guy doesn't mean you're a great football player.
better than Aaron Donald.
JJ is a great football player. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and cough up my 2 here. And his name has just been mentioned, Aaron Donald. In my opinion, the best defensive lineman of the decade, the most dominant, just changed the game for game planning that defense, in my opinion, the best physical. I don't even know where I'm going with that, but just the best defensive lineman of the decade, in my opinion. And the counting numbers are there too, if you want to talk about them. I don't have them written down, but they're there.
Well, I can give them to you if you want to hear it. He has one season of 20.5 sacks. Guess what his second highest season of sacks is?
Go right ahead and tell me. I know you're going
12.5.
Okay.
Okay. JJ had 2 20.5s, a 17.5, and a 16.
Well, at the end of the day.
Well, about that.
Hey, that doesn't I think with the Texans that they had other pieces around him that they couldn't quite game plan to block JJ the same way. If you watch Aaron Donald play, the double and sometimes even triple teams that have been thrown his way. I mean, that's how I look at it. He changed the defense, the game plan for the other offense every single week, and I'm not sure that JJ did quite the same.
Okay. I don't agree at all.
Okay.
I think JJ was more disruptive. I think it was by far more disruptive. He had 39 tackles for loss in 1 year, and led the league three different occasions in tackles for loss, in addition to all his sacks. So.
I don't think JJ's a bad pick. I've already told you he probably would have been like my 7 or 8 on my top 10 if I were doing a top 10.
Okay, so he'd have been 5 or 6 too low.
I mean, it would have been nice if him and Clowney could have put it together at the same time. I think honestly that would have helped him out even more. I mean, his numbers are ridiculous as is, but just having that other freak on the other side. I mean, you just didn't ever see them two go off, and offensive has to plan for stopping
both of them, right?
Yeah, you can't double both of them.
Yeah.
So
I feel like he got the attention much more so than Clowney, and that's one of the reasons I had him at my number 2. So.
Yeah, if Clowney had been that dominant premier pass rusher right from the get go, I think, and JJ avoids some of the injuries, I think honestly he could make an argument for 1 just based off of everything that he's accomplished. But 2, I have no problem putting him 2.
And for me, I'd say that the injuries and the tail off in the last 3-4 years is probably what put Donald over him for me. But
yeah, I mean, he's been in the league a lot longer than Donald too. So
yeah. So what are we at? We're at
2 for Matt.
I'm starting to go on a little bit of a run here. 2 for me is Drew Brees.
Yep, quarterback.
Oh gosh.
These are the guys I'm talking about. Were better than Cam, though, right? Like I said, there were several that were better than Cam.
Yeah, and that's where we're going here. I mean, Brees, honestly, there isn't anybody else in the league that has frustrated me more watching over the last. I mean, since he came into the NFC South, I think he has to thank playing in the Dome and Sean Payton for a lot of his success. Obviously, his career could have went a lot different if he stays in San Diego or he goes to Miami and Nick Saban doesn't screw that up. Wanting Culpepper over him, but I mean, the guy goes out there and it doesn't matter what defense he faces, he's putting up 400 yards pretty much. And if Brees had won a Super Bowl this decade, I might have put him at 1. That would have been a tough stretch, honestly. But at 2, I feel like that's just kind of where he fell based on me. And I know I went kind of quarterback heavy, but just with these guys overall, I think with the passing touchdowns and passing yards, I think that's probably where he fits in. And honestly, I give Brees a lot of crap, but I mean, the man did get the most out of Marcus Colston for his career. And, I mean, he did get gifted Jimmy Graham, but for the most part, I mean, he's getting some scrubs, honestly, but not even more, really. I mean, he's got Michael Thomas now, so, I mean, that's a 8-yard pass right there, and Michael Thomas can celebrate his 120 receptions for a season. Feel good about that, but whatever.
Yeah, I think.
Don't even get me started on Michael Thomas and his whatever.
Yeah.
I cannot stand him, and every time he catches an 8-yard pass, he acts like he just caught the Super Bowl winning touchdown.
That's it, man. It's it. Oh, let me just draw up a comeback route for Michael Thomas, and so be it.
Yeah, that offense is pretty much a cheat code, and for me, I could have the top five very easily could have been 4 quarterbacks with the way the game has been over the last 10 years. But for me, and I think Seth did kind of the same. I picked one for me who I felt were the 5 most dominant at one position. So I don't argue. I can't argue with Breeze there. He's not on my list. He would have been if I would have done this differently.
Yeah.
And went quarterback heavy, but I wanted to try and stick to a different format just because quarterback heavy was boring to me.
Yeah, and honestly, that's how my list is going to end up being. But there's guys I ended up considering. I mean, like just where they didn't have the stats, but I mean, like a Darrelle Revis or even prime Richard Sherman. I mean, things like that. Just a cornerback. Just game changers, I guess.
Yep.
But it's easy to go off of stats, and this is why I kind of wanted to do this because I felt like you're going to get more variety doing NFL than you would as far as NBA. If we did top 5 for NBA, I mean, I'm pretty sure we'd probably have somewhere close to the same list. And I mean, MLB, I don't know. I mean, it'd be
MLB.
That one might be a little bit tough.
Turns into almost a favorite players thing because it's tough with that because all the really good guys outside of 2 are going to have similar enough stats that you can make an argument for all of them.
That's true. And I think that I agree with Breeze probably being number 2 quarterback for the decade. I feel like we're all setting up for the final number 1. I feel like we all are probably on track with the rest of the world with our number 1 player for the 2010s. But I like Breeze just because as a 5'9" athlete myself, being that undersized quarterback, it's like I have a special place for him in my heart. He's still taller than me, but
the guy that gave us all hope.
Yeah, he got crap. The whole time he was being scouted and recruited, and got crap, and got passed over in San Diego. Ended up with the Saints, and I feel for me, I just congratulate him on all his success after all he's been through. And like you said, their offense is pretty much a cheat code down there. And I think Sean Payton is the right guy for him to be working with too. I think, if he would have gotten together with a different coach, maybe like a Ron Rivera type, it would be a completely different story for, for him. But he got with an offensive mind who's really focused on that side of the ball, and they can kind of feed off one another. And I think that really helped him. And it's the same thing with like Pat Mahomes, right? He's got Andy Reid. It all really comes down to who you get paired with. And the tools around you. So
do you this is just a completely hypothetical scenario here. Do you think Drew Brees' career would be different if he ended up in San Diego? Do you think it'd be any different than how Philip Rivers' career went there?
No,
I think he's better than Philip Rivers. I think they have a Super Bowl. I think he has a Super Bowl.
I don't think he has a Super Bowl. I think it ends up the exact same as Philip Rivers. He has all of those counting numbers that Rivers has. And Rivers has great counting numbers every single year but he just and San Diego, even under Rivers, has been the favorite at times to win it all, and they just have never put it together. I mean, I think it ends up the exact same. I really do.
I've seen Philip Rivers enough because they're a divisional opponent for me. I know that Drew Brees would make a difference on that team. I mean, Philip Rivers had LaDainian Tomlinson, an all-time running back, and he had one of the best tight ends of all time. Imagine what Drew Brees would have done with those two.
Did he have Sproles while he had
And he had Sproles, yep.
Okay.
Yeah, he's had some incredible outlets. I mean, as a quarterback, what more can you ask for as far as a check-down outlet than Antonio Gates, LaDainian Tomlinson, and Darren Sproles? I mean, that's like the all-time check-down outlet team right there. And other than an 8-yard comeback route from Michael Thomas maybe, but –
Right.
All right, let's get on with it. Let's get everybody's one.
Okay, we can all just say it.
I'm afraid it's all the same, but
unfortunately,
yeah,
you can say it, Matt.
Tom Brady.
Yeah,
unfortunately,
the evil.
You can tell with the disdain in all of our voices that we all hate him.
Yeah, And you know what, man? Like, obviously, him coming to NFC South this year is, I mean, of course it happens, and especially it happens when we're terrible and awful and rebuilding. Um, but Brady was the most hated NFL player by me for the longest time, ever since I was a kid. I mean, dating back to the Super Bowl in 2003. I mean, that and I think later on in life, I think it gradually went from me hating Brady to me hating Belichick.
Yeah.
I think that's where
There's
it
that
went. And
evolution, right? Like
Yeah,
you
I'm
go
with you,
from
I'm with
hating
you
a player to
completely
a
there.
coach.
Like I almost I almost started to feel like Belichick was the one. I mean, he was the one pulling on the strings, but Belichick was the one that made me hate Brady for some reason.
Yeah.
It wasn't Brady's doing; it was Belichick's doing. That's what I started to think at the end there.
I don't hate
was
Brady
just
personally. I don't hate Brady. I actually really respect Brady with what he's been given and all the success that he's had. They've had some really good defenses, yes. But, I mean, when his number one wide receivers for the longest time would go anywhere else and be complete trash. I think he's done the most with the least of any quarterback that I've seen.
Except the brief run where he had the cheat code of throw it up to
Yeah.
Well, he had
Let's not talk about
Moss
that.
and he had Gronk, but I mean even Edelman. I mean, who's Julian Edelman on any other team really?
Mike Thomas.
Who was Wes Welker on any other team?
Well,
I mean,
yeah. I mean, we saw what Welker was when he went to Denver. I mean,
Well, that was the
but
concussions.
but I was about to say. I mean,
Yeah.
how many concussions that guy got now? I mean,
way more than he told anybody about.
he
the
made Matt
helmet size that
Slater
he was
a
wearing was
household
huge.
name. I mean,
Yeah.
come on, Matt Slater is a household name. Yeah.
But yeah,
Dude.
it speaks volume that he was unanimous number one, and I didn't expect anything different, to be honest. And
No.
I mean, I know that Matt shares that hatred. Not hatred's not the right word. Matt shares
Disdain.
that disdain for him that I do. Seth doesn't quite have it, but even with that, I still felt like that was going to be Matt's pick too.
And I'll just say that Cam Newton is undefeated against Tom Brady.
That's
in his
the
career.
point I was going to make earlier when you talked about him coming to the NFC South. That if only Cam was still our quarterback, then we'd have a chance because he hasn't lost to him yet.
And I still honestly think that Cam will end up in New England at some point, whether it be at the beginning of the season or whatever. I mean, there's no way Belichick's riding in with Stidham or Brian Hoyer of anybody. I mean, so.
And he's made comments before about Cam and how much he likes Cam. And probably partially that stems from the fact that Cam's always beat him. But at the end of the day, I mean, if you give him Cam with his game planning and his what he was, I mean, let's be honest, Brady's not some physical specimen.
No.
So
I mean, that's what I mean by the most with the least also, right?
Yeah, if you give Belichick Cam, if you give Belichick a healthy Cam, just help me.
We may not see a healthy Cam again, Wes.
It's just watching Aaron Hernandez line up across with Gronkowski and Edelman, and I think it still had Welker at the time.
Scary.
I mean, it was terrible.
And not because Hernandez was lining up. It was just scary football.
And I think they might have had like Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis running the ball.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
It's always been running back by committee there.
Bolden, Burkhead, like
LeGarrette, and
Dylan.
then there was who was the Minnesota running back for a while.
I know who you're talking about.
I don't think it was Maroney.
I can't think of his name.
I don't know. But the fact that they got a first-round pick for Deion Branch from the Seahawks and then basically got him back for free, I mean, that's just ridiculous. I mean, the fact that they conned somebody into giving up a first-round pick and then that teams continually trade with Belichick. I mean, you got Randy Moss for a fourth-round pick, I think. Fourth and a seventh, I think. Just don't trade with the man.
He's continued to fleece teams every single year. It's ridiculous. So I love Cam. I do not want to see him go to New England. I want him to prosper wherever he goes. I hope he goes somewhere that plays us and he beats the living crap out of us this year. I'd love for him to get a ring. I really would. So if I
It's
guess
not going to happen.
I guess if it takes New England to do that, I may be okay with it. But I mean, he should have had a ring in Panthers blue. That's where I'll.
Yeah.
So let's all rattle off our if we have them, the honorable mentions that we talked about. Anybody got their list down? I can do mine. I had Rodgers, AP, JJ, Sherman, Vaughn, and Cam. So pretty much everybody I had has been on my honorable mention has been at least mentioned or talked about in our discussion.
Yeah, I had two of yours that you picked. I had Rob, Gronkowski. I had Aaron Donald, and then kind of my flyer pick was Darren Sproles. On the special team / flex position.
Yeah.
I've never seen a flex special teams or who's had the longevity that he had and the impact on the game.
With like 3 broken legs mixed in there too, I feel like.
Yep. Yeah. And I what I hear maybe is we have the newer version of that here in Kansas City now. So
who's that?
We'll see.
And
our first round draft pick. Yeah.
Yeah. Clyde should have a great season there, honestly.
Yep.
Mine, I had let's see. I had Gronk, I had Aaron Donald, I had surprisingly AP and Frank Gore. Frank Gore seems like the guy who just
won't stop,
never goes away.
He's the number one all-time rushing just because of that.
He's going to play until then. I mean, until he breaks the rushing record. I mean, he's going to play. And it's funny. I mean, the guy overcame an ACL tear and everything else, and just keeps signing one-year deals and keeps producing. I mean, it's unreal. And then I think I had Revis and Sherman written down if I decide to go the cornerback route. And then obviously Kuechly.
Yeah. All right.
Well, thanks for being on the show, Matt. Appreciate it very much.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me, guys.
So that's our top 5 NFL players from the 2010s. You all please get in the Instagram stories and vote on who you think won, whether it be Matt, Wes, or me. And then also give us your top 5 whenever we post it in Instagram stories too. We'll find our winner out this week, and I'll have to do something dumb for losing last week, I'm sure. But thanks for being on the show, Matt. I appreciate it. And thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Later.
Whole cast going crazy. Whole cast going crazy. Top 5 we debating. Top 5.
There it was. That was Seth's punishment.
That was my punishment.
Thanks for supporting our show, 5 Over Friends.
We hope you'll join us next week as we debate a new topic.
Don't forget to submit topics on our latest Instagram post for a chance to be our next guest debating your top 5.
Subscribe, rate the show, and share with your friends to help us grow.
See y'all next week.